I'm very sorry. I should have paid attention. So we're going to listen to Gita Mahatmya. We will listen here and then I will explain at the end of 18th chapter. Gita Mahatmya is a collection of 7 verses. It was written by Shripad Shankaracharya and it is the glorification of Bhagavad Gita.
अथ गीता महात्म्या गीताशास्त्रम् इदं पुण्यं या पठेत् त्रयता पुमान् विष्णुपदम् अवाप्नोति भयशोकादिवर्जित गीताध्ययनशीलस्य प्राणायामापरस्य च नैव सन्ति हि पापानि पूर्वजन्मा कृतानि च मलनिर्मोचनं पुंसा जलस्नानं दिने दिने सकृद्गीताम्भसि स्नानं संसारमलनाशनम् गीतासुगीतकर्तव्या किमन्ये शास्त्रविस्तरे या स्वयं पद्मनाभस्य मुखपद्मादिनिःसृता भारतामृता सर्वस्वं विष्णोर्वक्त्रद्विनिःसृतं गीता गङ्गोदकं पीत्वा पुनर्जन्म न विद्यते सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दना पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् एकं शास्त्रं देवकी पुत्रगीतम् एको देवो देवकी पुत्र एव एको मन्त्रस्तस्य नामानि यानि कर्माप्येकं तस्य देवस्य सेवा.
This is also written in introduction of the book. This is a very prominent verse from all the verses, very famous, I guess. Sarva Upanishado Gavo Dogda Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gita Mahat. It means all the Upanishads are like a cow, and the milker of the cow is Lord Shri Krishna, the son of Nanda. Arjuna is the calf, the beautiful nectar of Gita is the milk, and the fortunate devotees of fine theistic intellect are the drinkers and enjoyers of that milk. I really like the vocabulary, the fortunate devotees of fine theistic intellect. So actually, whoever gets to read and understand Bhagavad Gita is a very fortunate person and has a very fine theist intellect. The brain substance is very, very fine. Okay, welcome. This is chapter 1, Arjuna Vishad Yoga. The chapter 1 is also called as Arjuna's Yoga of Lamentation or Observing the Army in the Battlefield. Again, there are 3 prominent personalities in this particular chapter and who are going to have different reaction to the same scene. Who is this person? Maybe I'll allow. I will point and you answer. Who is this person?
Dhritarashtra.
Very nice. Who is this person?
Arjun.
Very nice. Who is this person?
Duryodhana.
Amazing, amazing. Everyone is a devotee here. Okay, so we're gonna see. So this is the first verse of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1. The first verse is not spoken by Krishna, is not spoken by Arjuna, is not spoken by Sanjaya, it is spoken by Dhritarashtra. Okay, the first verse is Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharam Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavasyaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. It's a very nice verse. Dhritarashtra Uvacha means Dhritarashtra said Dharam Kshetre Kurukshetre. So the field of religion, which is the name of the field, is Kurukshetra. Samaveta Yuyutsavaha. So assembled together with an intention to fight. Who were assembled in the field of Dharamkshetra called as Kurukshetra, assembled together with an intention to fight. Mamaka Pandava Sheva, my sons, and the sons of Pandu, Kimakurvata Sanjaya, what did they do? So he's saying that in the field of Kurukshetra, which is the Dharamkshetra, the two parties were assembled together with an intention to fight. Who were the two parties? My sons and the sons of Pandu. But what did they do? Means he's very doubtful. Okay, we say face is the index of the mind, right? So this is the Dhritarashtra and this is Sanjaya. Sanjaya was the disciple of Vyasdev, and because of the mercy of his spiritual master, he was given the ability to see what's going on in Kurukshetra, even though he was sitting in Hastinapur, and he was given a live recording, the live overview of the battlefield. And Dhritarashtra was born without an ability to see, so he could not see, but Sanjaya was reciting to him what was happening. So tell me, when you look at Dhritarashtra's face, you can all chat with me. Just type in the chat box. What do you think are his feelings? In the first verse, I'll give you a hint. Prabhupada writes two things. What Dhritarashtra's feeling? But anyhow, what do you think? What is he? What is his emotions? This is the first verse. Fear and anxiety, doubtful, worried. Okay, worried, worried, worried. So everyone is saying worried, worried. Fear, apprehensive. Partial towards family is not a feeling. I'm asking about the feeling. Anxious, curious. Uh, so Prabhupada writes, okay, thank you very much. Prabhupada writes two things, fearful and doubtful. So he's fearful. And what is he fearful about? That is there going to be a fight or not? Because he did not want to compromise, right? That's why he's asking Kimakur with the Sanjaya. And the same is the reason for the doubt. Fear is also arising because he knew that his sons are not as virtuous as the Pandavas. And because they're standing on the field of religion, the Kurukshetra, it's going to have some effect on the Pandavas. So he was like fearful and then he was doubtful. So this is a nice slide which was made by Navanishta Prabhu, which actually explains the zest of the verse. So Dharam Kshetre. You see, in South India, I know it's different in North India, but in South India, whenever there is something auspicious, they they actually start the process by boiling over the milk. They over the in the on the gas stove, like they let the milk boil over, which means beginning of auspicious work. So Dharam Kshetre means it's a very auspicious place, a place of religion, right? And then he's addressing his sons and the sons of Pandu, Mamaka and Pandava. Actually, he's not supposed to do that because you see, Pandu died at a very young age. So his five sons were left behind. And we are talking about a royal family. We are not talking about like an ordinary family. So as a caretaker of a royal family, it is his responsibility. It was Dhritarashtra's responsibility to take care of the five sons of his younger brother. But over here, we are seeing that when you want to make a paneer or a cottage cheese, you put the lime, right? Lime juice in the hot milk, and it separates, it curdles around. So like that, so the cottage cheese gets separated and the water gets separated. So like that, he's separating. He's separating by saying my sons and sons of Pandu. But actually, they all belong to the same family. It shouldn't be. And now this is a very funny thing. So let's say that I give this plate full of rasgulla to somebody. Uh, let's say I give it to you. So if and then I ask you, what will you do with it? What will you do? I'm giving you 700 rasgullas in a plate. What are you going to do with it? So that's a very ambiguous kind of a question, right? Because of course you're going to eat it. So they have assembled. I showed you the painting of the slide of the scene. Like there are like crores and crores of animals and soldiers and family members assembled there with all the weapons. It definitely did not look like a shopping mall. But then he's asking this question, Kimakurvata Sanjaya means what did they do? So he's doubtful. He's doubtful that even though they have assembled there in such large masses, is there going to be a fight or not? So this is actually revealing the mind of Dhritarashtra. Okay, and then who is this gentleman? Who is this gentleman? I should let you unmute. Who is this gentleman?
Dronacharya. Dronacharya.
You see where I'm circling. Who is this gentleman?
Duryodhan.
Duryodhana.
Duryodhana, yes. Very nice. So then this is the second personality in this chapter. So when he sees the arrangement of the military phalanx by the Pandavas, he gets very bewildered because he wasn't expecting it. You see, the Pandavas had just come back from the exile in the forest, right? And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of finances to arrange for a worldwide fight, a world war. It was a world war, right? So, and he did not expect that there's going to be such an amazing arrangement of military phalanx by the opposite party. When he saw that, he comes to his teacher and says these words: "Oh, my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada." So, who is this person? Duryodhana is talking to who? Who is this person?
Dronacharya.
Nice, thank you. So what is happening? That he gets bewildered and then he comes and talks to Dronacharya. Now I'm going to focus on the face of Duryodhana before I explain the verse. Now tell me, what do you think, how he's feeling? You can write to me in the chat box. What are the feelings of Duryodhana? And I think, probably focus. So his eyes are going to fall off from the socket. Angry. Okay, shocked. Fearful, bewildered. Angry, distressed. Angry, afraid, hostile. Hostile is not a feeling. Hostile is a reaction. He is afraid seeing the large army. Fearful, worried, surprised, insecure. Okay, shocked. Yeah, so he's quite shocked, right? He's quite shocked about the fact that how come this happened. So let's understand this verse a little bit. That he is actually, when Arjuna starts fighting, eventually, he actually shoots an arrow towards the feet of his feet of his teacher, Dronacharya, to pay obeisances. But over here, we are seeing that Duryodhana is coming and kind of shouting at Dronacharya. So because he's a very political person, Duryodhana is a very political person. He had a lot of political skills, so he did not care about who the other person is. All he cared was, how can I get what I really want out of this? So he is actually criticizing his teacher. That's not a proper behavior. And then he's saying that so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. So he's blaming Dronacharya, right? That you see, you taught this science of military phalanx to Drishtadumna. Drishtadumna was the son of Drupada. And Dronacharya taught this science of military phalanx to Pandavas, to Kauravas, and Drishtadumna. So there's a story. Son of Drupada is the father of Drishtadumna and Draupadi. So Drupada and Dronacharya were buddies in Gurukul. They were very best friends. But there was a misunderstanding, and then they became best enemies, or worst enemies, I should say. And so worst enemies that actually Drupada performed a fire yagya to get a son who will kill Dronacharya in future. And because of that yagya, Drishadumna was born. And Dronacharya knew about it. Dronacharya had full knowledge that Drishadumna is going to kill me. But he was so magnanimous that when Drishadumna was brought under the shelter of Dronacharya for learning the military science, Dronacharya did not decline the teaching part. He said, anyway, everyone has to die some way or the other. So why should I shy away from performing my duty as a teacher? So he actually gave the science of military fighting unbiased to Drishadumna. And now this Drishadumna has arranged a military phalanx against Dronacharya. So that's what Duryodhana is telling to Dronacharya, that you see, your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada, has so expertly arranged, see what has happened. So it also means, Prabhupada writes in the commentary, that he warned Dronacharya that don't become lax in your fighting. Don't become lax just because your favorite disciple Arjuna is there and now Drishtadyumna is there. Okay, so then we go on. As we go on, so these are the first two scenarios in the first chapter. First, Dhritarashtra speaks, then Duryodhana speaks, and then Duryodhana speaks from verse 2 to verse number 18. And then he speaks about this, and then he also speaks about who are in his party and who is standing on the other party. So he names the soldiers, the most prominent fighters. And then what happens is that different conch shell starts roaring in the battlefield. सघोषो धर्तराष्ट्राणां हृदयानि वृदारयेत् नाभाषा पृथिवीं चैव तुमिलो अभ्यानु आदयन्. The blowing of this different conch shell became uproarious and thus vibrating both in the sky and on earth. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. So when Pandavas and Krishna blew their conch shell, indicating the beginning of the fight, the Vyasdev is writing this word, Hridyani Vradharayet. When they blew their conch shell, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Shattered means that there was like a sense of fear. Oh, something is going to happen to us. But such kind of a thing is not mentioned when Kauravas blew their conch shells. We don't read that Hridyani Vradharayet is happening on the part of the Pandavas. It is mentioned only when Pandavas and Krishna blew their conch shell. This is a very nice. So if you go through verse 15 and 18, 15 to 18, then the names of different conch shells are given. Please try to memorize. Krishna's conch shell is called Panchajanya, Arjuna's is called Devadatta, Bhima's is called Pondra, Yudhishthir's is called Ananta Vijaya, Nakul is called Sughosha, and Sahadev is called Mani Pushpaka. So the conch shell actually symbolizes Lord Vishnu, the presence of Lord Vishnu. Okay, and then Krishna is actually situated in the heart and it directs the senses of all the living entities based on our desire. We will understand what I'm saying. To many of you, this may look like, what is this? But just hold on, and there are many chapters remaining. So it is said we are all part and parcel of Krishna in the sense that a child is a part and parcel of the parent, right? Like that, a soul is a part and parcel of Krishna. And Krishna actually directs and is the sole proprietor of the senses of a living entity. That's why he's called Rishikesha. Rishikesha means the proprietor of the senses, the controller of the senses. Okay, now I'm going to list different signs which indicate in the first chapter that Pandavas are going to win the war from the get-go. It was very clear. Its analysis is given that Pandavas are going to win the war. What are that? First, oh Krishna. So first is Dharam Kshetre, a divine chariot, Kapidhwaja, Shankhanada. Okay, we'll go over it. So Dharam Kshetre, the place was very auspicious. It was the field of religion, and it was going to affect it was going to influence the virtuous Pandavas positively. And then the chariot, which he was fighting, was given to him by Lord Indra, which actually could no, sun god. Sun god gave the chariot, and this chariot was divine in the sense that it could actually capture all the four directions of the space. Kapidhwaja means Lord Hanuman on the flag of the chariot, which symbolizes that as Lord Hanuman assisted Lord Rama in the victory against Ravana, like that he's going to give directions to Arjuna to fight on behalf of Krishna. Then Shankhanada, the transcendental conch shells that we just spoke about, are very is considered auspicious. Gandiva, the bow of Arjuna, was given to him by Pashupati Nath, so it was also very divine. It was the day of Mokshada Ekadashi. The Bhagavad Gita was spoken on the day of Mokshada Ekadashi. The war was going to begin on that day. Then Hridyani Vradharayet, we just heard that the transcendental conch shells shattered the hearts. So it indicated that they were already expecting something gloomy to happen to them, the Kauravas. Then Bhishma's conch shell to pacify Duryodhana, it should be Duryodhana, I'm sorry, I misspelled it. This is given in verse number 12 of first chapter, that Bhishma was blowing the conch shell to pacify Duryodhana, but actually it also indicated that we are going to lose the war because of Krishna's presence. Then Bhagya Lakshmi, wherever Krishna is there, Mother Lakshmi is accompanying him, and Mother Lakshmi symbolizes auspiciousness. And then of all the most important factor, Rishikesha or Krishna himself was present. on the battlefield of Kurukshetra on the side of Pandavas. So this all actually indicates from chapter 1 itself that Pandavas are going to win the war. So this is the last personality. Now this is when Arjuna told Krishna to draw his chariot in the midst of both armies, and he looked at the other party, and he looked at the people standing on the other side to fight. This was his reaction. You see what's happening. That if you look over here, how he looks ready for a fight, he looks so alert and prepared. But over here in the beginning, his arrows are falling off. His helmet has fallen off from his head. His Pashupatinath, the bow, the Gandiva bow has slipped out of his hands, and he's looking very dejected. Right? He looks very disappointed and concerned, and he's even has the tears in his eyes. So then he gives 5 reasons to Krishna that he's not going to fight the war. When he looks at the party, he says, I'm not going to fight the war. So 4 out of the 5 reasons are given in first chapter. Okay, so first reason is compassion. He says, Krishna, my family is an object of my compassion. I shouldn't be killing them. So that reason he's given in verse 28. Then he says no enjoyment. Our definition of enjoyment in this world is association with other people, right? How can we enjoy alone? If I'm left alone in the forest for years and years and years, how can we enjoy alone? I was listening to one lecture yesterday, and it was said that in the Vietnam War in United States, there was this one soldier which was estranged in the forest of Vietnam for about 4 years. And then he was somehow or other rescued, and then he was interviewed that how did you live alone for 4 years in the forest of Vietnam? He said, oh, to keep myself from going insane, I meditated on playing golf. So you see, and then when he came out, he became an expert golf player. He could just like strike the strokes very perfectly, because he said I didn't want to go insane, so I was thinking and meditating on playing golf. The bottom line is that enjoyment means that we have to have association. I need someone else. I need my friend, my family, my community, my children, or something like. So he's saying, Krishna, I'm going to fight the war, and let's say all of them die. So who am I going to enjoy with? Everyone is going to be dead and gone. So what am I going to do with this building here? So he gives this reason in verse 31. Then he says sin. He says it is actually sinful to even offer a verbal fight to the elders of our family. But now you're telling me that I should pick up an arrow and shoot the arrow and shoot it towards Bhishma and Dronacharya, and they should die because of that. That's sinful, grossly sinful. Why should I do this sinful act? And then he says family tradition. This is very interesting. Actually, it's an event. It's a flow from verse number 39 to verse number 45 of this chapter. Arjuna talks that how family tradition is going to be destroyed. He says that elders of the family are the carriers of the family tradition, right? And if the elders become slain, if they die, then there is no family tradition. And if there is no family tradition, because we don't know what tradition to follow, then they will be the women of the family will become polluted, because they will be exploited by the society, and there will be no offering of oblations to the ancestors. So and because of the pollution of the woman, Varna Shankara will come out. Varna Shankara is the unwanted population. And then there's going to be destruction of all the community and family projects, the whole family tradition. When the family tradition is destroyed, then the entire community and family projects are destroyed. Very nicely described in first chapter. Second chapter, which we will discuss tomorrow, he gives the 5th reason in verse number 6, that indecision. He says there that I know that I'm a Kshatriya. I know that the Kshatriya's duty is to fight, but right now I'm confused. I don't know what to do. I'm undecided. Okay, so these are the different symptoms in the body of Arjuna, which are mentioned in chapter 1, when he sees and he actually anticipates the misfortune waiting if he fights the war. So his limbs are quivering, his mouth is drying up, his whole body is trembling, his hair on the body is standing on the end, hands, the Gandiva bow is slipping, the skin is burning, the legs is unable to stand any longer due to impatience, and he says I'm forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling due to weakness of the heart, and I only see misfortune. So these are the symptoms of Arjuna on the war field, and then we studied what Dhritarashtra was feeling, and then we studied what Duryodhan was feeling. So Prabhupada writes that this is because of Arjuna being a devotee of the Lord. He did not want anything for his sense gratification. So which one can you relate to? Compassion. Which one of the reasons of Arjuna can you relate to? No enjoyment, sin, destruction of family tradition, or indecision. Honestly, I've been doing this for over a year now, and every time I go through this first chapter, I get convinced that yeah, Arjuna should not fight. But you see, so far Krishna hasn't said anything. Krishna only speaks one verse in first chapter. But then when Krishna starts addressing, so we'll see tomorrow how he addresses each and every reason that Arjuna gives that he's not going to fight, then our decision making changes. But if we just look at the scenario from Arjuna's point of view, it feels very convincing, right? It feels very convincing that why should he fight a war after all? But hold on, stay tuned because there's more coming tomorrow. So this is the summary of first chapter. Dhritarashtra's inquiry in first verse. Kim akurvati Sanjaya. What did they do? Then Duryodhana talks about his fear from verse 2 to 11. Mahatim chamum vyodham. Then there's different blowing of the conch shells from both the parties, described in verse 12 to 19. And then the key word is Hridyani Vridharayet, when the Pandavas and Krishna blow their conch shell. Arjuna's observation of the army of Kauravas is described in verse 20 to 27. Gandivam samshate hastet means his bow is slipping out of his hands. And then Arjuna starts giving reason to Krishna after observing from verse 28 to 46 that why is he not going to fight? Apratikaram ashastram. So Krishna consciousness, I just want to emphasize one point here. Krishna consciousness is not without feelings, is not without emotions. The first chapter itself, there is a mention of so many emotions and feelings. It's not that we become colorless when we start chanting Hare Krishna, or we become like aloof, or we become detached. No, there is actually a proper understanding of what is what. Okay, so I want to show one video of Srila Prabhupada. This is Srila Prabhupada's interview after the first Rath Yatra in San Francisco. But I think